I was looking at doing conservation planning in the Burdekin River irrigation area, and got quite advanced in my ideas as to how to deliver a really good corridor conservation network on the floodplain. So I thought it was time to go and have an interview with the engineer in charge of the development. Tim Smith was Queensland Water Resources Commission, it was in those days. And anyway, I organised a meeting, and I was doing my honours based on the precedent set by CSIRO, who did the ecological study for the irrigation area, has said that representative areas of floodplain habitat should be retained throughout the irrigation development in a connected habitat corridor network. And so my honours was looking at technically how do you design the best, cost effective as well in terms of not losing too much ag land, corridor network. And when I fronted up full of ideas, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed to tell this engineer all my ideas, he basically just shot me down and said, "Oh, those CSIRO recommendations, they're just background recommendations, sonny. We've got no intention, basically." And I was never one for pursuing academia for academia's sake. My whole intention always been to come up with some applied management outcome. And so, I'd already sort of struggled a little bit with academic things, so I basically threw in the towel at that stage. And about that time, the position for campaign coordinator for North Queensland Conservation Council came available because Peter McAdam, much loved Pete, was moving aside. And for a while, Pete and I shared the coordinator role. And that was really valuable because Pete was just such a great people person and a great operator, just, calm and collective as opposed to myself at times. And I quite often describe my job with the Conservation Council as the most poorly paid but most empowered position I've ever had. And it was really fortunate too that when I took on the role, it was just before the Goss Labor government came to power. So we went from campaigning against the sins of the Conservative National Party government, which were just hell-bent on clearing the landscape and doing all the things they do, to a spanking brand new Labor government that appreciated they'd come to power partially on the strength of the conservation vote, and were very receptive to the interests and concerns of the conservation movement. And when the new Environment Minister, Pat Combin, came to town, he was keen to have a meeting with us, and we put a whole bunch of issues in front of him at the time. But one of the ones that I had a personal interest in pushing was the retention of corridor areas in the Briar, the Burdekin River irrigation area. And I fully explained the background to it and the need for it and the fauna values and wetland values of the site. And at the end of the meeting, he just went, "Yeah, well, that sounds fair enough. Yeah, we should look into that. We should do that." And it's we just left flabbergasted. We were ready for a fight. And true to his word, not long after, the government followed through with about $250,000 of funding to the Centre for Tropical Freshwater Research at JCU to follow through on the corridor planning. And it was a little bit incestuous, but legit in that a lot of the information I'd compiled from my honours went into the study, and I was even paid a couple of weeks' worth of consultancy fee for my contribution, a bit incestuous. But the end result was we ended up with 10 or 12,000 hectares of longitudinally and laterally connected corridors on the lower Burdekin floodplain in the middle of the irrigation area. And as far as I'm aware, that's unprecedented. There's nowhere else in Australia where that amount of planned habitat retention has occurred in a government-sponsored irrigation development.